They don't want you alone. That's the first truth people refuse to see. From the day you're born, society drills the same commands into your head. Be social, make friends, join groups, seek validation. School, work, media, culture. Everything repeats the same message. Connection is survival, isolation is failure. But no one dares to say the forbidden thing. Solitude is where power is forged. Solitude is where empires are born, and they know it. That's why it's treated like a disease. Look closer. Distraction isn't random. It's engineered. Every notification, every breaking alert, every meaningless update is a weapon. Not a convenience, a weapon. Designed to fracture your attention into microscopic shards. Modern psychology has a name for this. Continuous partial attention. The state where your brain is everywhere and nowhere at once. You're never fully present, never fully focused, never fully your own. This isn't just about smartphones or apps. This is a system built to keep your mind chained. A dependency so deep people can't go 10 minutes without external noise. When was the last time you saw someone sit in silence with their meal? No music, no scrolling, no television. Just the taste of food and the sound of their own breathing. You probably can't even picture it. And that's the point. Addiction disguised as lifestyle. Dependency sold as convenience. The human brain is wired for novelty. For thousands of years, that drive pushed us to explore, to hunt, to invent. But now, that same mechanism is hijacked by platforms and industries that profit from your restlessness. They don't want you still. They don't want you quiet, because silence breeds thought, and thought breeds freedom. Instead, they keep you hooked on the drip feed of stimulation. Keep you needing more, scrolling more, consuming more, and here's the dark truth. A restless mind is a controllable mind. If you can't sit in a room alone, you'll never think for yourself. If you fear silence, you'll pay anything to avoid it. A society addicted to distraction is a society begging to be ruled. That's the cage. And most people will never even see the bars. But the real trap isn't just distraction, it's influence. Spend every waking hour surrounded by other people and you stop being yourself. You start mirroring them. Their fears become your fears. Their desires become your desires. Their opinions colonize your mind until you can't tell where they end and you begin. People call it being social. In reality, it's the death of independence. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote, "Genius requires isolation." Not because great minds hate company, but because independent thought cannot exist in a swarm of voices. Look at Einstein. Long solitary walks, replaying equations in silence. Newton, quarantined during the plague, discovering calculus. Tesla, alone in his lab, chasing visions no one else could see. They weren't running from people, they were running toward truth, and truth is only audible in silence. And this is exactly why solitude terrifies society. Not because being alone is dangerous, but because it makes you untouchable. When you strip away the noise, the pressure, the constant need to perform, something terrifying happens. You hear your own voice. And once you hear it clearly without interference, they can't control you anymore. When you are surrounded by people all the time, you stop thinking like yourself. You begin to mirror them. Their fears become your fears. Their desires become your desires, and slowly, without realizing it, you are no longer living your own life. This is not weakness. It's biology. Humans are social animals. The brain is wired to imitate, to adapt, to blend with the group. That instinct kept tribes alive for thousands of years. But in today's world, it traps people in cages they cannot see. Every conversation you join, every opinion you hear repeated, every trend you follow because everyone else is doing it. These things shape you far more than you admit. You think you are making independent choices. But most of the time, you are just running on borrowed thoughts. Arthur Schopenhauer saw this clearly. He said, "Genius requires isolation." Not because geniuses hate people, but because true thought cannot exist in an echo chamber. Independent ideas need silence. They need distance from the constant noise of other minds. Think about history's breakthroughs. Einstein pacing alone for hours, turning ideas over in his head until relativity emerged. Newton isolating himself during the plague, inventing calculus while the rest of the world panicked. Tesla working through the night in solitude, creating blueprints for a future nobody else could imagine. This is not coincidence. Isolation clears the static. It silences the pressure to conform. It removes the weight of other people's expectations. And in that silence, something powerful happens. You hear your own voice for the first time. That voice is what society fears most, because a person who thinks independently cannot be controlled. But solitude does more than free you from outside influence. It forces you to face something far more terrifying, yourself. When you are constantly busy, constantly social, constantly distracted, you never have to confront what's inside. Your fears stay buried, your insecurities stay hidden, your true desires stay unexamined. That's exactly how society prefers it. Distracted people are predictable. Self-aware people are dangerous. Carl Jung warned about this when he wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Read that again. Your unconscious patterns, your unhealed wounds, your hidden drives, they are steering your choices every single day. And as long as you keep drowning in distraction, you will never see it. But sit in silence. Really sit there, without your phone, without noise, without escape, and suddenly the patterns appear. You start seeing why you repeat the same mistakes, why you are drawn to the same types of people, why you sabotage yourself over and over again. It's uncomfortable, painful even. That's why most people run. They bury themselves in constant socializing, in endless entertainment, in fake busyness. But the few who endure that discomfort, they unlock something the rest of the world will never touch. They become unstoppable. Here's something almost nobody admits. Most of life is performance. Around friends, you act like the fun companion. At work, you play the role of the dedicated employee. In relationships, you try to be the perfect partner. These roles aren't always lies, but they're edited versions of you, polished, filtered, adjusted to make sure you fit in. And over time, you start believing in the mask more than the person underneath it. That's the danger. The authentic self gets buried beneath layers of performance until you can't tell where the act ends and the real you begins. But when there is no audience, when you're alone, the performance ends. The masks fall away. And what's left is raw, unedited reality. That's what terrifies people. Because what if there's nothing there? What if beneath the charm, the roles, the masks, they find someone boring, selfish, flawed? Here's the truth. Everyone is flawed. And that is exactly where real power lives. Your flaws, your shadows, your broken edges. Those aren't weaknesses. They're the soil of authenticity. They're the cracks where creativity and truth break through. Look at the greats. Van Gogh battled mental illness. Hemingway drowned himself in alcohol. Steve Jobs was infamously difficult, obsessive, uncompromising. None of them were perfect. They were real. And that reality, and raw, jagged, unfiltered, is what shook the world. Society doesn't want this. From the moment you're born, the message is drilled into your head. Don't be alone. Don't be unsocial. Don't stand apart. They disguise it as care. Isolation is unhealthy. People need connection. Don't lock yourself away. And yes, loneliness can destroy a person. But solitude is not loneliness. They are opposites. Loneliness is hunger. It's the pain of wanting connection but not finding it. Solitude is power. It's the strength of choosing yourself first, of being whole without constant external validation. Society blurs this line deliberately. Because lonely people are easy to control, lonely people overspend to impress, they follow trends to feel included, they chase leaders, join movements, buy products, anything to avoid being left alone with themselves. But the person who chooses solitude, they're unshakable. They don't buy approval, they don't beg for validation, they don't chase crowds, and that makes them uncontrollable. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much time he saves who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." That's the shift solitude creates. When you stop measuring your life by other people's eyes, you stop being needy, you stop being desperate, and suddenly you become dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent way, dangerous to the systems that rely on your insecurity, dangerous to the people who profit from your dependence. Think about it. What's the most powerful phrase you can say to anyone trying to control you? I don't need you. Those 4 words cut deeper than any threat, any argument, any manipulation. Because they reveal the ultimate truth. You have options. You can walk away. And the person who can walk away is the one with all the power. Real power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from not needing to be controlled. That's why solitude is the ultimate weapon. The person who can thrive alone, who can build without applause, who doesn't crave constant company, that person holds all the cards. They can negotiate from strength because they're willing to walk away. They can take risks because they're not terrified of social disapproval. They can speak the truth because they don't need anyone's approval to survive. That person is free, and free people are always dangerous to unfree systems. When someone embraces solitude, their mind sharpens like a blade. The noise disappears, the distractions fade. Focus becomes absolute. Psychologists call this intrinsic motivation. The drive that comes from within, not from rewards, not from praise, not from recognition. And intrinsic motivation is unstoppable. It doesn't burn out because it doesn't rely on applause. It renews itself endlessly. Look at the giants of history. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter in solitude as a single mother rejected and broke. Elon Musk spent nights alone, devouring physics manuals, teaching himself rocket science, writing code. Einstein, Newton, Tesla, each of them spent their most productive years in isolation. They weren't hermits hiding from life. They were people who understood that the best work happens behind closed doors in silence, far away from the crowd. The world only sees the stage lights, the applause, the headlines. But every empire, every invention, every masterpiece was built in invisible hours, alone, focused, obsessed. And here's the twist, even the most connected people in the world are alone at the top. CEOs, presidents, innovators. Surrounded by people all day, yet carrying the weight of decisions no one else can touch. They make the calls alone. They bear the consequences alone. They fight their fears alone. That solitude is what forges them. Because leadership isn't about pleasing the crowd. It's not about consensus or keeping everyone happy. It's about doing what's right, even when everyone thinks you're insane, even when you're the only one standing. Nietzsche said it best. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. Every innovator, every revolutionary, every person who has changed the world has had to resist the gravitational pull of the group. They had to stand alone first, before anyone followed. But here's the problem. Modern people can't stand silence. They're addicted to noise. Not just literal noise, but mental noise. Notifications, feeds, endless content, stimulation on demand. They've trained their brains to panic in quiet. Sit in silence for 5 minutes and anxiety creeps in. Restlessness, the urge to reach for the phone, turn on music, call someone. anything to avoid being alone with themselves. That discomfort isn't a sign that solitude is wrong. It's a sign that it's necessary. It's the brain detoxing from years of distraction. It's the soul remembering what it's like to exist without constant validation. Yes, it feels uncomfortable, but every form of growth is uncomfortable. And on the other side of that discomfort is clarity, power, freedom. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Social media, they promise connection, but in reality, every scroll pulls you further away from yourself and deeper into someone else's highlight reel. You start comparing your internal chaos to other people's curated perfection. You start craving validation from numbers that mean nothing. You start performing your life for an audience instead of living it for yourself. That's not connection. That's slavery disguised as entertainment. The platforms know exactly what they're doing. They're not built to make you whole. They're built to keep you hungry. The algorithm is designed to keep you just unsatisfied enough to keep scrolling, but never fulfilled enough to stop. Digital crack for people terrified of silence. But here's what happens when someone breaks free, when they choose solitude over noise, when they stop performing and start living. Creativity explodes, ideas surface, imagination ignites. Mozart composed symphonies in his head during long, lonely walks. Virginia Woolf wrote her greatest works in a small, silent room. Picasso painted alone through the night. They didn't need an audience. They needed space. Space for their own minds to breathe, to connect, to create. And here's the truth no one wants you to realize: independent people are bad for business. Entire industries depend on insecurity. Feeling lonely, buy something. Feeling inadequate, pay for validation. Feeling empty, consume more. But a person comfortable in solitude, they don't need the distraction. They don't need the dopamine hits. They don't need the products designed to fill a void that doesn't exist, and that terrifies them, because the independent person is uncontrollable. Here's the ultimate power solitude gives you: the power to walk away from toxic relationships, from soul-killing jobs, from groups that drain your energy, from systems that exploit your insecurity. Most people never walk away because they're terrified of being alone. They'd rather stay in chains than face silence. But the one who learns to enjoy their own company, that's the person with real power. They can leave the party when it stops being fun. They can end the relationship when it turns toxic. They can quit the job when it kills their soul. That's freedom. Every great leader, every revolutionary, every builder of empires knew this secret. External power comes from internal sovereignty, and internal sovereignty is born in solitude. So here's your challenge. Turn everything off for 1 hour. No music, no screens, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. Watch what rises, notice the discomfort, sit with it. Don't run, because on the other side of that silence is everything you've been searching for. Clarity, focus, creativity, freedom. That's what they don't want you to have. That's why they keep you distracted. But solitude is strength. Never forget that.